Hey everyone, Karen the Warp Spinster here. Thank you for visiting my channel where we cut and sew and see what happens. Last week we were working on Hildegard, the Mama Tove, and I appreciate all your comments and suggestions. There were some really good ones, and I'm still pondering Hildy and what we're going to do with Hildy. So we're taking a break from Brillig this week, and I want to do some work with 2.5-inch squares again. If you've been following me for a while, you may remember that I did quite a long stretch there where I was working with 2.5-inch squares. And I finally took a break from that, and now I want to go back to that for now. I believe I have a playlist for 2.5-inch squares, so I will link that in the discussion below. I also did a mystery quilt that uses 2.5-inch squares, and I will put a link to that below as well. This time I'm going to be using solids because that's just mostly how I roll. But you could certainly do this with prints. I'm just going to do solids today, and I may in fact just do the brights and not add in any pastels. We'll see. And I may end up with some prints in here as well. You know that all we know is that we don't know what I'm going to end up with. So I also have a couple of black and white stripes here. I see a different black and white print crept in there. Don't hate that, so that's fine. And some black and white. The first thing I'm going to do is to sew some of these together into just a long strip. Not rocket science here. You all know how to do that. So I'm going to put a few together and then come back and talk about what I think I'm going to do with it from there. One strip pieced, and now I am going to, big surprise, cut a curve. Now I have some choices here. I can cut a very narrow slice off of here so this will be wider when I sew that curve, or I can make this kind of halfway so that this ends up being very narrow. I'll have two very narrow ones. So I think I'm going to start off with just cutting not too much off here and planning to use this as just one piece. So this is too narrow to do anything with. Makes me sad, but here we are. Now I'm going to cut some black. Looks like I'll have to go find a larger slice of black. So let me do that, and then what I will do is cut the same curve here. So I'm going to do an improv curve. I will cut the same curve and then stitch it. I will put the video about my curves, I will link that below, but basically I'm just going to do needle down position, go slowly, and just lift the fabric over gently. I'm not going to tug on it because I have seams here, as well as a bias edge on both the black and the strip set here. And just make sure that I'm measuring my 1/4 inch at the place where the needle is, not at the front of the presser foot. So I will go off and do that and be right back. I'm planning on this strip being fairly narrow. This is just an accent strip. There are two reasons I've chosen black. One is black always makes brights pop, and I like that contrast, but also when I go to press this curved seam, I can press it toward the dark. If I did say white here, then I would want to be pressing it this direction, but I'd be fighting turning under these seams, or press it toward the white, in which case I would have to undercut that a bit, and frankly, I just want the black. So I am cutting this just as close to the edge as I can so I have more options. And I could have cut these two together, but there's always some shifting when you do that, and particularly when I have these pieces that have got seams in them. it's more likely there will be shifting. All right, so I've left myself a little bit on each end. And I will mark where I'm going to start here. I prefer to have a convex if I can. So I'm going to mark this. If I have any white lead in there, I'm going to mark this a little bit down from the point, which I used to just mark right here at this point, but because of the angle of the curve, I never knew how much of a dog ear I should leave there. So now I mark it here, and then I know I've got it in the right place from the beginning. Here is the curve. Went well. It's a very gentle curve, easy enough to do. This is the trimmings from when I cut this black strip, and isn't that a lovely curve? If I had had a little wider strip, or even just cut it more down the middle than I did at this edge, then I could have had another strip that I could use later. Didn't, partly because I'm not sure just how wide I want this to be. And now I'm going to cut, honestly, use your words, Karen. I'm going to cut another curve, which I don't want to match this one. I don't want it to run parallel to that curve. But I do want it to be fairly narrow, at least in the narrow spots. How else to say that? So I'm going to just wing it. Now, I have to remember that I have another 1/4 inch seam to do, so I can't cut it any closer than just over 1/4 inch. And I do want it to show some, so I'm going to just do a wing it sort of situation here. Remember, we cut and sew and see what happens. And it's not a real crisis if it gets really too much narrow in some spot, because then it will just fade in and out, and that's fine. It could go completely under and then come back out again, so that's fine with the curve. It isn't parallel. It's not so far off. This piece, I might be able to use again. We'll see. So I will set that aside. And now what I have planned for this, I could do a stripe here. I could do white here. I could do another strip of this. I could do a solid color. I could do a print. I think what I might want to do is a narrow bit of a stripe. Does that surprise anyone? Well, let's lay a stripe down, see what we think. Let me grab that really wide stripe. Apparently I was going to use this for a binding of some sort, but whatever. Now, again, I want this to be narrow. This would just be a little much for what I'm seeing in my head anyway. It will be pretty bold for what I want. All right, let's try it. That's what we're about here. And so now I need to cut this. Sorry, I think this black is probably a little hard for you to see on camera. So I'm really doing this stripe for you so you can see where the edge is. Isn't that good of me? I was born to help. All right. There's a machine in a video game I play. I was born to help. Okay, so we'll start up here. And again, going to make my matching or registration mark a little bit down from the edge as soon as I get some white. Okay, there we go. Well, it does not seem to want to do this. I don't know what its problem is today, but I think I can see you probably can't see it, but I can see this mark there. So, off to sew. There's another very narrow strip, which if I'd cut it wider, I could have used again. I need to have my thinking cap on today. I have to go find it. My original thought was that I would now do a strip set that would have some ladder-like strips across, maybe straight, maybe not. Add that on and then kind of start over again. But as I'm looking, if I put this offcut piece here, I kind of like that effect. So that may be what we end up doing. And then this may be another really narrow piece. And it may end up being, because this is so narrow, this may end up being, well, it could be a straight line too. Could be a straight line. Don't hate that, but then I would need a transition into whatever goes on here next. I'm not anticipating a lot of straight lines other than in the strip sets here. So what the heck? Let's just cut this and see what we've got. And yeah, I just really kind of like that effect. All right. So now we are going to cut this curve to match the one in black. And we'll stitch that on. Now this edge is now straight. I could do some trimming. That would be very narrow. I could narrow my seam for sure. And might be a little much for the eyes, do you think? So I could also sew this as a straight line. See if I can get those to match up, or maybe I want them to shift a little bit. And then I'm going to put some more of the strip sets. I'll do another strip set. Put another one over there. I think. Do I want to do that, or is that going to be too much? It's a nice effect, but I'm afraid it's gonna cause the eyes to spin a little bit. So I might set that aside and continue with my original plan. This is going to get very narrow here, so I will probably narrow my seam. And I'm going to do a strip set that has some white, that's mostly white, and then maybe I'm going to do brights in between. I thought I was going to do black, but I think it will have that same effect here and be a little for the eye. I want this to have a lot of motion, but I don't want it to boggle the eyeballs. So I'm going to, if I do a strip set, yes, if I get some strips of this instead of the 2.5-inch squares, then I can make like a wide strip set that I can then cut as need be. So I will gather some strips of brights, or maybe I just want the same bright. I don't want to do stripes. Do I want the same bright? That would, all right, what I could do is use the same bright and then make another strip set that I'll use elsewhere that is a different bright. So I'm going to choose a bright that I really like, and let's go with maybe this blue or this green. And grab some white and make that strip set. When I come back, I'll show you that and how I'm going to cut it. Here's the thing. I have been working on this, and I noticed when I got to this point, these are too far apart. So I put these closer together, and I either need to put in another piece here, another green piece, Or maybe I'm going to put in a black piece or a straight piece, but I think a black piece. And I think I might make it straight. So over here, I decided I am straight lines, I mean, not curves, not necessarily parallel to the edge. And do that again. That will break this up a little bit and bring the eye in here for a little interest as it moves around. Might need one up here too. So I'm going to insert, let's say, a black stripe in here, and we'll see how it looks. May love it, may hate it, but we can usually come around to working enough with it that we end up liking it somehow or other. And there may, in the course of things, be a circle involved. I'm just saying. It is so much better with the strips spaced closer together and having some black strips, straight strips occasionally. Much more interesting, and I like the contrast of the curves versus the straight and the colors, so happy with that. This is beginning to look like a film strip to me. St. John's University presents, ding, a sound film strip catechism. Yeah, showing my age here. All right, this is what I'm thinking of. This is not going to be that wide. This is going to end up being pretty narrow. And this is looking very, I kind of want a curve going on here. We'll see how that goes. First of all, I'm going to cut a curve here, and it's not going to be much of a curve. It's going to kind of mimic what's there already, because I want to have enough black for when I cut this curve. Now, you can see that this is longer than this is. And so I need to think about where I want this to be. I think this is fine. We might end up doing a curve that goes up that way. So let me pull this back so I have as much use of this as possible. And I didn't make this too wide because I don't want to have all of these pieces look like that. I can flip it or rotate it 180, I guess, and then it will look different. But I want some different colors, not just the green here. So I'm going to cut this curve, then sew this piece. I'm watching my fingers. I'm being very careful. If I was concerned, I could get out my protective glove. All right, so I'm going to add that on, and then we'll figure out what we want to do for the curve right there. Okay, marking up there. You can't see it, but I can. Fingers crossed. We'll see how it turns out. Here is what we have so far. And I'm thinking, I do a leaf shape so much. Sorry, I'm almost thinking I'd like to do something a little different. So what if I do something like that instead? And then that leaves me with another piece to use elsewhere. And of course, top and bottom are not lined up, but what I'm thinking is that at some point I will have them be, not this, but whole units that are kind of fitted up against each other. I think I'll probably try fiddling with it on Procreate, and I'll kind of give you an idea of what I come up with. So now I have to decide what's going here. And I think I want another strip of black, and then I can add on this. And I know this one is too straight and I'm not happy about that, so I'm going to make this curvy just because my eye will be happier. All right. So I think I might do another strip of black here. But here's the other thing. I'm going to put this here just as a marker here. Actually, that's not too bad. It doesn't have to go the full length, does it? Now it looks like fish. Uh-oh. Okay. You know, anything that looks like an animal, we have to name it, and no. So here's what I want to do. It involves, of course, say it with me, circles. May or may not happen. May or may not work. But let's give it a go. Talk about circles later. But in my stash, can you believe, I found a curve so close to this one, and I like it very much. And I'm wondering if we stack a couple curves like that. Adds a little more interest to it. Brings in another color here. All right. This is how we do it here. We just stumble on things and take it from there. So I am going to add this piece on here and come back for whatever lies ahead. I have added that piece, and I still have a lovely curved piece to use elsewhere. But getting back to here, trying to think about how I want that to look. And I don't really want to lose this lovely part of the curve. I kind of need to leave it this way so as I'm adding on other units, I'll have some more options. If I cut this off, then I don't have as many options. All right, now I really am going to go look for a couple of circles. Now we have some circles. What do you think? That one may be a little large, or maybe not. Once more is finished, this might be good for kind of pulling things together. So as another section goes in there, maybe that will be something more like that, or no, don't like that as well, but we won't know until we get more pieces together. And we may decide we don't want circles after all anyway. This I'm going to have to do something with because it's just, I don't know. I just can't stand on even ends. And because I'm probably not going to have a chance to do much more on this today. Oh, now it's looking like a whale, isn't it? Coming back to Tove territory. I actually am pretty anxious that this not look like a fish. I don't have anything against, well, I just did it again. I have nothing against fish, mind you, but I'm trying to get away from looking like leaves and fish. So that is better. Now this is looking kind of like a circus tent or something, isn't it? That's all right. I like bright and happy too. If we put some black here now, it'll help to kind of calm it down a bit. And somehow then that looks like a jail. All right. I think this is where I'm going to leave it with this for today. I will go on to Procreate and kind of see what it might look like as we move further along. What would it look like if we said it was finished, didn't I? If we did that. I don't know. Might be better if we had a black piece down there, wouldn't it? Still looks like a fish. Please tell me something else it looks like so that I'm not thinking of it as a fish. I kind of like that idea. Having a curved black piece down here. Then if we, no, or we, I don't know. I don't know yet. Let me know what you think. Always appreciate your opinions and comments. I'm still mulling over Mama Tove. So if you have any additional comments about that, be sure to let me know. This one's still looking a little bit big, but I don't want to cut it down because it might fit in better as it gets bigger. Without knowing what that's going to look like, at least that has a... kind of want to move that orange away from its counterpart there. I just don't know. We're just going to have to see what happens. Now it looks like a Conestoga wagon. Now that I've got a wheel on there. Boy. Sometimes it's not good to be a visual person. Okay. Anyway, there's another thing that I want to just touch briefly on, and I might do something in Procreate with that as well. And that is a couple of these pieces, leftover pieces that I have, are such a cool shape. And they're too narrow to use as is, but I just love the shapes and how they might look together. So I think what I might do is lay out some of the shapes, put them into Procreate, and like do a tracing of them. And then I could use a different method to actually make something that has these shapes in it now. I don't know how it will turn out. Might be good, might not be good, but I don't know. There's just something about that shape in particular. That looks like a bird. Oh dear, there's no hope for me, people. There's no hope for me. It's just the way it is. Hopeless cases. All right. I'm just yammering and wandering and meandering. So I will hopefully see you next week. If I have some pictures after I put this in Procreate, I will put them on to the end. Next week, maybe we'll do more of this, maybe something else. But in any case, I hope I will see you then. In the meantime, be well, be safe, be happy, be quilting. Peace out.